panelists are settling down in the interest of time, I will introduce myself briefly, and I will ask the other panelists to do the same thing. My name is Clayton Shillingford. I'm now retired from the DuPont company, and I spent quite a lot of the past year trying to promote not only the efforts of the Rosie Douglas Foundation, but also the sister organization, the Dominica Academy of Arts and Sciences. Let me say something very brief about the efforts of the Arts and Sciences, because what the Dominica Academy of Arts and Sciences will be doing is parallel to and supportive of what the RDF will be doing. Now, I know someone mentioned this morning on the earlier panel, how are we going, I think it was Steve Johnson, who mentioned how are we going to know where our talented people reside. And one of the things that the Dominica Academy of Arts and Sciences has tried to do is to find those persons wherever they are, professional and skilled persons, and to build a directory of Dominicans all over the world, the United States, Canada, England, wherever they may be. And if you go into that website for the Dominica Academy of Arts and Sciences, you will see a number of names there, their contact arrangements, email and fax and phone numbers, and you will also see a short biological profile of their skills and the particular profession that they hold, their qualifications and so on. Now, one of the main reasons why we tried to do that was not only to make it possible for these Dominicans to be accessible by government and the public and private sector in Dominica, but also to allow the situation to evolve so that when there is a need for expertise, we don't have automatically to go to England or to the United States and be depending on people who are not familiar with our culture, are not familiar with the language, are not familiar with the customs and so on, and folks who can have a greater impact on this very development effort we are talking about this morning. So that's one of the key things in the creation of the Dominica Academy of Arts and Sciences. We have a number of distinguished panelists here, and I'm not going to take up a lot of time because we really have to move this thing. I do want to say, however, that this is a unique opportunity for us. I think it is very different. I've said many, many times on television and radio in Dominica, this is a very novel way in which we're trying to create these institutions to help the country. So let's put our best effort forward and let's get things done. Now, the first, I was thinking, earlier on that perhaps in creating this panel called Restoring Civil Society, perhaps we should have had that first. And the reason why I say we should have had it first, it's necessary for us to look at the foundation upon which the economic development is going to be based. And because of that, we are going to have in this panel an emphasis on education, because that is critical. We do have to bring this education program on stream, and Dr. Donald Peters will be talking about that. We are also going to be talking about health, which is also essential. It is essential because if people are not healthy and they don't have health services that are adequate, they are not able to work. We're going to have as well some presentations on social security, because I suppose people want to be safe, they want to be secure, and we need to have that in the society as well. So without much ado, I am going to ask Dr. Donald Peters to start off, introduce himself, and to take his 4 or 5 minutes to present his position on education. And Mr. Skerritt, if you don't mind, sir, at the end I will ask you to do exactly what the Minister of Agriculture did, which is to summarize the proceedings of the panel number 2.
Thank you, Dr. Shillingford. I'll try to be brief on time. Abel, please don't put me on the stage. First, I'll talk briefly about what I really wanted to impact upon this audience, and is the need for the Dominica State College. My name is Donald Peters, I'm the Vice President of the State University of New York in Plattsburgh. Education is critical to us not only because it's the key to economic development, but more importantly, Dominica now only educates 4% of its population in higher education. That is the same number for the Caribbean. As an individual in the last decade, I've offered 104 scholarships to the people of Dominica at a cost of $4.6 billion. Basically robbing the people of Mississippi, Minnesota, and New York for Dominica, but I keep on doing that. Right. But I don't think that is the approach to solving our tertiary education in Dominica. And what we have proposed is a very challenging late Prime Minister Rosie Douglas. On September 23rd, we met in Portsmouth, and one of the things he wanted was, he had this dream of the State University of Dominica to compete with the UWI. That was his dream. Of course, he wanted it at Portsmouth. I told Rosie that maybe we should stand on the hill. So what we've conceptualized, for those of you not familiar with Dominica, we have 4 institutions now which are post-secondary. It is the nursing school, the teacher training college, and the community college, which involves the technical wing and the academic wing. The immediate plan is to put those 3 together to form the fundamental basis of the Dominica State College, with a plan to expand to 5 other faculties, the Faculty of Agriculture and Information Technology, and Faculty of Business and Hotel Administration, Faculty of Continuing Education will be added in the year 2005. A university is not a building. It is the transference of knowledge from the people who have the knowledge to the people who don't. So people think about infrastructure. We haven't got the answers to those problems yet. The university probably could be on the trees. I'm not really concerned about the buildings. I'm concerned about how we get information to the people of Dominica. Why education? Well, first of all, I start the reverse way by noting that this is the year 2010, and the people of Dominica still vote by colors. Ladies and gentlemen, colors: blue, yellow, green. That's because they can't read. Or the concept is because we can't read. But we live essentially in an illiterate society. We will recognize that. The economists recognize that. And that is because education is not accessible to the people who need it. And we're not talking about education. When we talk to Dominicans about education, we think about degrees. But one of the things the State College will offer is a continuing education, prior learning assessment, in which people experiential learning will be assessed by the college, and they'll be given a formal credential for it. We need training. A person in IT does not need 4 years in college to do electrical engineering. Engineering technology takes 2 years at the State University of New York in Canton. These people can take down a system and bring it back up in seconds. These are things we need to do in our own country. And if we take leads in this, we can develop it for the entire Caribbean. Grenada is gone, St. Lucia is gone, St. Vincent Dominica needs to develop their own system. What we're trying to do is to ensure that a country depends on itself. This has been the theme here over and over again, and I think we can do it. Dominica has the highest per capita of graduates in any country in the world, which means that if we build this university, people can get back to the Caribbean instead of hustling in the streets of New York and go back to teach what they've learned in our country. This is not a dream for us, it is a real thing, and in your package you will see the plan. It is extremely well structured. One of the things we're working closely with the minister is to partner with the State University of New York system. Not only my university, but the entire system. The plan is, because you need resources, and there are no resources in Dominica, we can't dream about it, we just have to figure out one way to do it, is to get one major university to partner with us. In the United States today, the recognition for universities is starting international partners. And everybody's going big time on this, so why not New York? New York is huge, they have tremendous resource. And why do we need resources? Well, for instance, to teach at the university, you need a master's degree. We have people in the system now with either no degrees or bachelor's degrees. You cannot teach in a college without a degree, so the State University would bring the people up, give them the masters in the field, send them back down, and while they're here, we would send faculty down to teach the students while they're being trained into a master's program. There are a number of things we can do, setting curriculums and all of the other programs that we need, and that is the plan in its entirety. The focus, therefore, of the State College is to ensure A, people have access to college, to university training, B, to ensure access for people who are already are in the workforce, and C, to create an avenue so that our young people can get the skills they need to develop their own jobs. We have this notion that government must provide jobs at all times. The 41 students I have at the State University that I brought to New York, I've informed them that I will take the scholarships if their mind is to go back to work for government. Every one of them are required to develop their own jobs or to be consultants to the region. So
must commend, first of all, the members of the RDF Foundation. I feel particularly blessed and happy to be here today and to be associated with the foundation since I was at the very first meeting. And in fact, I told them that they should have it in New York. And I am glad that they followed up on that idea and have it in New York. We were planning to have it around sometime Independence Time so that people could also attend the church service, but I realized because of what happened we couldn't have it, but I'm very happy to be here today. And most importantly, the fact that people from we have a vast wealth of expertise and talent out there, and to see all of them gathered in the room at the same time, that was an experience that I will never forget. Thank you.
Dr. Douglas, and he will talk on health.
I'm really energized to see so many people at this symposium, and I have to take my hat off to the Rosie Douglas Foundation organizers. You guys feel the energy? I mean that. Yeah. Before I forget, let me introduce myself. I'm the chair of family medicine at St. Vincent Catholic Medical Center here in Jamaica, Queens, and head of the residency training program in family medicine. But again, what I'm getting is the theme I'm seeing is that we seem to be ready to move from words into action. We seem to be ready to move from reliance on government to reliance on ourselves. We seem to be willing to move from the focusing on our area of concern, focusing on an area of influence. In other words, the things that we can actually change, that's what we want to focus on. That we seem to be ready to move from stage one, where we go to a dance and raise some funds and send it down, and then we never really follow up on where the money actually ends up, or we're ready to move from that stage into specific business activities that would make a change in Dominica. In other words, if we have something that we can start that is working on a particular thing down in Dominica, we feel that is going to be, that's where we're ready to move to right now. You know, we will continue stage one though. We'll continue to raise funds, you know, the usual things that we do, you know, fundraising and send money for particular things, toys, rides, and all that. But I think as an educated people, as an absolutely educated workforce, as you can see here today, I think we're ready to move to stage two, which is specific business activities, specific activities like the doctor mentioned, the university, state university, and things like that, that will make a difference in Dominica. Now, we're all aware of the problems in health in Dominica. You know, some of you guys, people might have been away for a long time, so I just wanted to itemize briefly a couple of them. You know, we've had, like everywhere in the world, we've had rising medical costs, and that has severely eroded the availability of equipment and supplies in Dominica. We've had the erosion of our National Health Service. Remember, when we grew up, most of us, there was a National Health Service in Dominica. We've had to introduce user fees because of the rising medical costs. These user fees a lot of the time are not paid by people, and that means that that's a big drain on government in able to continue to subsidize that system. You're aware of mismatched expectations. People expect that government is supposed to provide them health care, and that's not a realistic expectation at this time, you know, with the high cost of medical care. We've had the loss. We have an AIDS epidemic going on in the Caribbean. It's a very silent epidemic, just like in Africa. Nobody's talking about it, but there is an AIDS epidemic going on in Dominica and the rest of the Caribbean. People are not using condoms as they should, and the AIDS is just spreading wild. Everybody just saying, nobody's saying anything about it. We're aware that you're aware of the decline in good health habits that we used to have, that we used to eat mostly fruits. I mean, growing up, people used to focus, I mean, we used to eat so many mangoes. I mean, I can't tell you a joke about Rosie when he climbed a mango tree and more or less stayed there for the whole day. And, but I won't say what happened after that. Right now, those same people that mango trees, they are sitting watching TV at home. So that is a big change. You know, people are eating bread instead of eating fruits and vegetables. That's a major decline in good health habits in Dominica. People are not walking to places anymore. Everybody's driving. There's total traffic jam and everything. So there's a significant decline in good health habits in Dominica. As you know, it's the good health habits that produce health. It's not the medications, of course. It's sanitation, public health, is that things like as you know, there's a big brain drain. I mean, people advertising for this is right in Dominica, in the newspaper, and the news are coming up here after they've been educated by the Dominica taxpayers. These are problems, these are major problems going on in Dominica. You know of the major drug abuse problem in Dominica. My own hometown, Portsmouth, is a major center for that, that this is what is going on, and I just want you to know about some of the problems. I also want you to know, though, about some of the good things that has happened. There is a worldly touted primary healthcare system in Dominica. Everybody knows about it. United Nations, every other word they say is talking about that system in Dominica, where no one is more than half an hour away from medical care. That's a good thing. We've had major technological advances. I mean, you could get a sonogram, a pelvic sonogram right in the office, the doctor's office in Dominica. Ross University, one of the largest universities in the world, is based in Dominica. That's a major benefit that has happened. We probably don't utilize Ross University as much as we should, but that's a major plus. Dominica has a cadre of very dedicated medical professionals. These are people that have been working for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, 10 years, 20 years without backup. On call every night, every other night, and then you don't find that kind of thing anywhere else. We have a lot more Dominican doctors now, and a lot more in the pipeline. So these are some of the good things that are going on. Now, let me ask you, what can we do? Again, that's the theme of this conference. What can we do to impact on Dominica's development as far as health is concerned? One of the things I would like us to focus on as we looking at this area is developing a system where we can have ongoing dialogue with Dominican professionals here and professionals in Dominica. If you try to send down something in Dominica, you'll be surprised how difficult it is. There's no actual contact. There's no, can we have a thing, maybe by email, for example, or by website, where Dominican professionals here, by specialty, could be interacting with each other and interacting with Dominicans in Dominica. That is a relatively low-cost thing, maybe just a website or probably something that could be done electronically. But it would, I think, make a big difference, because if you have to send them something, an equipment or supply, then there would be a receiving organization, maybe the Dominican Medical Association or something, that could be empowered to work with us so that people have in different areas of interest. You're interested in public health, you're interested in community health, you want to send out some posters for a school, you know who to contact. It's one phone number, it's one email address, and then it will be just directed towards who is actually that particular person interested in that. So it will improve the ongoing dialogue, it will improve the equipment and supply transfer, the technology transfer, and it would not be dependent on government, which is the key of this whole thing. It would be something you didn't facilitate in government, maybe the chief medical officer or something, but it would not be something you're depending on government, to set up this thing. This will be set up by ourselves. So this is one of the things I want us to try and see if we can leave here today.
What we're trying to do is just explain to the Dominican public the concept of the State College of Dominica. The idea is to create a university in Dominica that could provide the first 2 years of higher education for all Dominican citizens. And the focus of the college would be to reduce the cost of higher education to Dominican people, 2, to create access to education for Dominican people, and 3, to take the education that people already have, there's prior learning, experiential education, and train them to formalize the education. Conceptually, the people who have been doing bookkeeping for 3 years or 10 years could now go to school for 2 years and get a formal degree. Dominica already have 3 university centers. I mean, the nursing college, teacher training college, and the community college. We will fuse those 3 in the initial phase to form the base of the Dominica State College. The second phase would be to introduce the Faculty of Business and Hotel, the Faculty of Applied Science and Technology, and the Faculty of Agriculture and Environmental Science. We are certainly encouraged by the response so far, and we have some funding from OECS which we are using to do the initial transformation phases, and I think that is going on at this stage. We are optimistic that the college will be in place by 2003, and we hope that some of the people here today will be either working there or contributing to its success.
And I wanted to just reiterate some of the things that Monty said. We talked quite a bit about the way Dominicans can help. The medical relief. Traditionally, the input of Dominicans has been, there's a big hurricane, let's do something. And then wait until the next big hurricane to really do something. There are different Dominican organizations in different parts of the world, in England, in the Virgin Islands and elsewhere, Canada, who have come together at different times to do things. But as Monty said, we want to be able to integrate it to the specific needs that are on Dominica. Okay, briefly again, I just want to further elaborate on what he said. The World Health Organization ranked Dominica 37th in the world of nations as far as the health parameters in which they measure the health of different countries. The United States ranked number 35. So my goal as one of the Dominicans on the health professionals on the health panel is to see in 3 years, by doing certain targeted things, to outstrip the United States. Now, the reason about this, the United States, as we know, we're here, and we enjoy the tremendous amenities, the CAT scans and MRIs and all the fantastic things. But unfortunately, the average for the United States is brought down in Appalachia, in the inner cities, and so forth. So the United States is not doing a good job in taking care of its poor and its underclass. And Dominica is recognized across the world. It's the leading nation in the Caribbean as far as the Pan American Health Organization has said, with its first-rate delivery system. The infrastructure, I was speaking and I was hoping to get Dr. Benjamin Griffin, the psychiatrist, on the telephone and put him on the cell phone right here. I thought it would have a great impact, but I couldn't reach him. But basically, while the rest of the infrastructure is good, the acute psychiatric unit is in a desperate state of disrepair. As you know, it was housed at St. Luke's Hospital stock farm at the prison. And it was destroyed by Hurricane David. 20 years ago, it's at Princess Margaret Hospital and still has not been improved. Still has that prisoner to inmate relationship as opposed to caregivers. Very little training among our nurses and professionals over there. The roof is leaking, there are no restraining rooms, lots of different things that he articulated as being problems. And for those of you in the health field who are interested, I have copies of the facts that he sent to me. We're looking forward to build an even healthier land. Again, we talked about the health supplies. We want to be able to target it to specific needs, to facilitate the shipments, as Monty just mentioned, and let each health professional be an ambassador. You know, I was brought over to the United States to study in Georgia by missionaries of the Southern Baptist Convention. And when we think of investors, we think of people, big bucks, we think of international organizations. They are people, they are high schools, they are nurses organizations, firemen organizations, police organizations who are looking for places to have conventions. Every single one of us can say, hey, why don't you come to Dominica? That's a good place to have a convention. And that's a form of tourism, not for the typical gambling jet set person that might go to Bahamas or Aruba or Barbados, but we want to attract people who can come, a high school band, come out there for your senior tour. We can do that, every single one of us. we can arrange to do that. He was telling me a year ago, the one anesthesiologist who had been working, as Monty said, day in, day out, he was sick and had to go out of state for medical treatment. And all of a sudden, the government was desperate to find someone to provide anesthesia. Okay, so we were calling all over the place, and finally, we were able to locate somebody. We want there to be a clearinghouse for the resources and the assets that are available. So I'd like to talk more about this as we go along, but in the interest of time, we're going to move along, and we'll talk more about it in breakout sessions. Thank you.
Well, the Rosie Douglas Foundation was co-founded last year by Gabriel Christian and a number of other people. The idea was to be able to memorialize the activity of the ex-Prime Minister of Dominica, and to give an opportunity to other Dominicans to participate in this kind of activity. The main objectives, of course, are to identify projects that are going to be beneficial to Dominica, both in the economic and in the social development area. And so this symposium was planned maybe 6 months ago, and as you can see, we've had a certain level of success here today. A lot of ground to be covered, but I think we have already identified a number of projects that will be beneficial, already in the pipeline, and we're going to move forward on those.
Ms. Margaret Henry to talk about Social Security.
Good day, thank you very much. When Affinir asked me to do something on Social Security, since I've just about finished a PhD in Social Security, looking at financing and corporate governance and Social Security systems in the OECS, I thought maybe a good topic would be DSS in partnership for the socio and economic development of Dominica. Because although Social Security has been placed under civil society, Social Security is actually the largest mobilizer of savings in Dominica, more than the banking sector, contributing 27.5% of GDP, accounting for just the reserves. And so Social Security, we start talking about economic development and social economic development of Dominica. We cannot talk about social and economic development without looking at the role of Social Security in that social and economic development of Dominica. And in looking at that whole Social Security development, one of the things that I looked at in my study was what are the design structures of the system that impact on the performance. What are the best practices for ensuring that these social security systems contribute to the economy, not just in terms of social aspect as we think of, but economic development. And what are some of the crucial factors? And one of the crucial factors that came up, because I did an econometric model, was partnerships. Partnerships not only with government, but partnerships with the trade unions, partnerships with the employers associations, and partnerships really with the wider society. And that is where the RDF and other groups come in. How then do you contribute or work with Social Security in contributing to social and economic development? And some of the things that some of the challenges that the Social Security, because in my study also I interviewed almost 200 persons from the OECS over a 5-month period in 2001 and over 2 months in 1999. And one of the factors that the Social Security of Dominica identified as challenges for themselves for the next one, currently and for the next 5 years, are compliance. One of the things that we have is low compliance, especially the self-employed sector. One of the self-employed was made mandatory, and I think that was really one of the shortcomings of Social Security, not just in Dominica, but also in the OECS. Because we know that we have a large informal sector, and so if we're looking about Social Security, which is supposed to provide for persons not only while they're working, but more so when they are no longer able to work and contribute actively in the productive sector. To leave out the informal sector, I think was a great shortcoming. And the whole thing about partnerships, and DSS has really not been very good at maintaining partnerships, or even actively building partnerships. And I think it also stems back to the origin of the DSS. When you look at the Act of Incorporation of DSS in 1975, you will note, and it is the only one in the OECS and I think the Caribbean, where the Act makes no provision for tripartite representation on the board. What it says is that the minister can select 5 to 9 persons at his discretion, persons in business, industrial relations, and that can be so big. But it is the only act that really doesn't make any provision, specifically state that. And I think, you know, the shortcomings not just with the government of the day of 1975 when it was incorporated, but we as a people failed. Because I went through the Hansards, I went through the old library looking for the newspaper. There was really no concern expressed, not by the opposition, not by the trade unions, not by the Employers Association, about involvement in that. And so we have had to blame. And so I really like this whole thing. It's not just talking. It's what action we can put in place to ensure that we sustain. We ensure that we build our country. As I said, the success of today will not really be today. The success of today is going to be the implementation of what we have said here today. That is what we will judge the success, not just on how many of us turned up and did a wonderful thing. I just want to run through some of the partnership areas that I have identified. And one of the areas, I think, is DSS has to be a very good relationships in the international sector, the ISA and the ILO, and also in the regional sector with ECCD. But there needs to be greater networking among the social securities in the OECS, because some of the challenges are the same and so on. Give me one more. The second one is also the trade unions and employers association. We must bring them on board. If compliance is a problem, use the trade unions to include that as one of their bargaining agreements, part of their bargaining agreement for compliance. The employers associations also ensure that they put pressure to bear on their members, and also in various other areas. The financial sector, the banks, and so on, and the Social Security has played a big part in economic development by providing loans for all sorts of things. I have one of the problems with that. Too often the loans have been below market rate, and we cannot really sustain an organization if we continue to lend money below market rate. The NGOs, because they also have the specific needs and special groups that they serve, and DSS to do that. RDF, because of the various skills that you have, and DSS, and we'll be looking for some various skills, and again, that opportunity. Insurance companies, because retirement pension plan is important, and we really have to ensure that we have a complement to Social Security and make it affordable for persons. And my last one, and that was very important, is government. The partnership with government has to be changed. That relationship right now is too lopsided in favor of government. And consequently, DSS has to renegotiate that relationship to make it a more equal partnership. Government needs to pay up. Government owes too much money and goes back for years. That has to be paid, because if that doesn't come in, then Social Security to ensure that they play an important part in the social and economic development. And while a lot of the experts in the international community say that there is no role for Social Security in economic development, that does not work for small states. That does not work for small developing states like us. Since they are the largest mobilizers of saving, they have to play a role. And that role is important. And one of the things that we have to ensure that role to make it, that these things must be done what I call a portfolio management framework. So that when we take objectives, we look at this thing holistically and not in piece scale. So that at the end of the day, we have a systematic development. And I thank you.
When I was approached in summer of this year, I found that it was a very worthy cause, and I also challenged myself that if not us, then whom? And I pointed at myself and said, if not I, then whom? I realized that Dominica belongs to all of us, and this is just the mantle that we have to take up. I have secretarial skills, administrative skills, and I know carrying on with an organization like this in cyberspace was going to require tremendous pulling together and synergistic efforts. So I decided that this is where I could contribute. I'm not an artist, I'm not a doctor, but I have executive secretarial skills, and I'm very happy and proud to be able to do that to help my country.
Our next presenter is Mr. Peter Sengana. He will talk on national security. He will also cover, to some extent, the presentation that should have been made by Mr. Raven Blackmore, who is not here. So he will be making essentially 2 presentations, but he has to keep within the timing.
To introduce myself, Peter Saint-Jean, currently a professor of sociology, social problems, and sociological research methods at GYC. And in fact, I'm being recruited now by SUNY Buffalo, and I'm trying to find reasons to go there. I think I found one. So most likely I could be a professor there. Currently I'm working on my PhD in communities and crime and sociology at the University of Chicago. Some of you may know my work from research in Grand Bay, dealing with issues of community policing and the like. Let me just say something very briefly. I thought that my colleague Blackmore, who would be here, I thought I would yield him a few of my minutes, so the minutes that I yielded him, I'll use myself, still remaining in time. Give me a cue, end me for myself, and then end me for Blackmore. Okay, let me just tell you that in 1996, bright and bushy tail from Canada, I went down to the research looking at community policing issues in Grand Bay, a stigmatized, a very vibrant community. And one day I was in the old Grand Bay bus stop there in the old market, and I saw a man that looked like Rosie Douglas, never met him before, but he recognized me. He had seen my face, I guess, on television and approached me to try to talk about some of the issues in Grand Bay. Let me read to you a quote that still was in the rubbles of my work, and I think it's very touching. Rosie told me, which I had on tape, that perceived social problems in Grand Bay, and in fact, the rest of Dominica, in fact, the entire Caribbean region and other parts of the world, have their roots in the problem with the equitable distribution of resources and prestige among people. Every nation and its people must pay close attention to how economic opportunities are distributed and the problems that will arise with lopsided development. Problems with incivility, corruption, the stability of the nation as a whole. People will rise in protest when they are treated unfairly. People will build subcultures of resistance when they feel left out. People will cheat the system when it does not afford them a good and fair opportunity. A nation is begging to be under siege when it does not pay enough attention to the equitable distribution of its land, resources, and prestige. In 1996, ladies and gentlemen, from Rosie Douglas, time is up. Very briefly, my presentation was meant to be a prelude to Raven Blackmore's presentation that will speak more specifically for the issues of national security, because as you know, if the nation is not stable, when I interned at the United Nations in 1994, Mr. Richard and others, sitting on the Security Council, one of the things you realize is that if a nation does not act together, forget about offshore banking, forget about investment, forget about this and that, we have to be able to have it act together. What I decided to do, I designed some of the conceptual framework to think about what we really mean by national security. And national security is defined on 2 terms. One of them I refer to as national safety, which is basically protecting the nation from invasions, coups, and terrorism, usually associated with big guns. And neighborhood safety, and local safety. Local safety is divided into neighborhood safety and community safety. Think about neighborhoods only as geographically defined spaces, communities as partners of interaction. So safety within space and safety among people in communities and in neighborhoods. And so I want you to know from Blackmore what it is that has been done in Dominica to acknowledge some of those issues, and of course he had some of this to talk about. Let me just, I said I was going to give someone a summarized version of mine. Of course, Rosie Douglas's idea of understanding what national security well emanates to what I think most of the panelists would be sensitive to if I was to pick their mind about the importance of security, and certainly what emanated for us in this discussion on this panel. The quick question is, I will skip right into the action. How is it that Dominicans in the diaspora can contribute to Dominica's national security? And I argue very simply that one of them is, Mr. Douglas, I think it is earlier on, that says that something to the likes that we oftentimes perpetrators in our own victimization. He didn't use that term, but I think that's what he was saying. And a lot of times we would have persons who leave Dominica, go overseas and come back and train persons to be criminals, even better criminals than they were when they left. So one of the things I'm arguing, the ways that Dominicans can indirectly produce to the stability of the country is to not create problems themselves, to lead productive lives and to share resources and information. It's a very minor thing because a lot of times we cannot implement these programs, but they're very little things that do not cause more problems that already exist. That was my simple point. That was a simple point. Let me get into Mr. Blackmore's paper in the interest of time, and perhaps if I bought myself more time, I have something else I want to say. Mr. Blackmore's paper, and I just learned. Oh, I have extra time? Oh, thank you very much. Mr. Blackmore's paper, I just learned right now that I have to present it for him, so I hope to do it justice. He said basically that there are 4 major issues in Dominica that threaten national security. One of them is drug trafficking, the second is money laundering, the third is light weaponry, and the fourth is HIV. Interesting that AIDS seen as a threat to national security. With the drug trafficking, what he argues that over the last 10 years, there's been increases in drug-related crimes in Dominica. The drug economy is somewhat associated with many kinds of forms of deviant and criminal behavior, which of course you can think about. Dominica being ideally located to transport drugs from South America, from the suppliers to the consumers in North America, from North and South America. And the drug trades are ultimately a visible form, alternative to other invisible forms of legitimate economic activities. And the drug trade right now is like perhaps the best paying informal economy now in Dominica. And he argues that the drug trade puts a threat to the very democracy of the country, instability when persons are trying to deal with legitimate means. Now, Mr. Blackmore was here. I'm sure he could tell you how he could get to deal with the drug dealers, but that's not my paper, so don't ask me questions about that. The second thing he spoke about was money laundering. He said, while it is great that in the advance of dealing with with the advance of dealing with the banana industry and so on and so forth, that we find alternate means that the offshore banking is great, but money laundering creates some problems that we need to think hard about. And he said also that the light weaponry, a lot of weapons have been brought into the country, and these are issues that need to be dealt with. I'm seeing someone in the back. I guess this guy told me to hurry up. I guess my clock is not working right. Lastly, HIV. A lot of persons, as was earlier said, mostly between the ages of 24, 25, participated in dangerous acts and causing a strain on the health system, a strain on the social system, and the issue of HIV he sees as a threat. There are other parts of the paper that I'm sure I can expand on, but in the interest of time, I will yield to whatever. Thank you.
Event given in the Caribbean American community of which I'm not a part. I feel completely vested in the Caribbean as a Caribbean American. The Prime Minister in whose memory this celebration is taking place, Rosie, is somebody whom I knew, whose energy and whose vitality and whose vision I shared as a Caribbean American, but as an elected official, certainly we were cut from the same kind of cloth, and so it's important that I come to identify with the growth and the development of the Caribbean, because it is in my term that none of us are getting anywhere until we're all going in the same direction. We cannot marginalize any nation of the Caribbean, whether they're wealthy, whether they're poor, whether they have 2,000 residents or they have 2.5 million, as in the case of Jamaica, because it is our human resource and our vision that is going to bring us to the place where we need to be as people with common history, common geography, and a common destiny.
panel. Perhaps there's some particular significance to that, but we will see.
I think we were left for the last because we charge per word, and that's why. Let me use half a second to thank the RDF for inviting me here today. Law in Dominica, or the criminal justice system in Dominica, has three fundamental weaknesses in the way in which it is enforced. One, it is limited in access. There is no comprehensive system of legal aid in Dominica. In fact, I was speaking to one of the most prominent counsel in Dominica today, Alex Lawrence, and he was indicating to me that if you are poor, if you're indigent and you're charged with murder, you will perhaps get state assistance to do your trial. But God forbid that you're convicted, otherwise you might as well make a peace with God, because the government will not fund that appeal. So that is the first fundamental deficiency. The second fundamental deficiency is that it lacks what is called a system of restorative justice. There is a move current in Western communities. Instead of focusing on trivializing every offense, such as assault, such as mischief, property offensive, you introduce a system of diversion. You introduce a system called alternative measures. As far as I know, unless you know the right people within the criminal justice system in Dominica, if you're charged with these offenses and you may be young and this might be your first offense, and perhaps you have a wonderful future before you, there is no system in place. You may be lucky to get the benefit of the legal system, but there's no system in place to give you that benefit. The third fundamental problem is that it is inequitably enforced. How many of you have traveled to Dominica, and there you see the poor little corporal on the street corner arresting the village Joe public for being drunk and disorderly in the street, while a few yards away, behind jalousies, behind manicured doors, a drunken, privileged man is beating his wife and not being charged. How many of you perhaps read, as I did a few months ago, when this officer, he was either convicted of dangerous driving causing death or impaired causing death. He received the grandly penalty of a $2,000 fine, when in the next page you see some Joe Pound being found guilty of assault bodily harm, and he gets 3 months in jail. It is inequitably enforced. And the difficulties with these are historical. We could spend the whole day talking about why this is so. Suffice it to say that historically, Dominicans have viewed the justice system as perhaps the last bastion where the poor and downtrodden have been confined. Those of you who have been involved or were involved in the struggles of the 70s recall the Brady Larceny Act, for example, in which I believe, talking about Granby, Chubby, I believe his sentence was reduced to 18 months in jail. And what was his grand offense? He stole a coconut from Mr. Nasser's estate. But that is the system of justice as we know it. How do we change it? Justice or the enforcement of law cannot change attitudes. You have to change the attitudes and then you change the law. So that if, for example, you place no interest or no type of significance on a legal aid program, then obviously you will have a significant number of young people being carded or discarded in the criminal justice system. So you have to have a sense of value. You have to have a sense that each individual is perhaps worthy of being treated fairly. Each individual is worthy of making a contribution, and each individual, if given a chance, can become a productive member of a society. Because after all, that is what a civil society is all about. And lastly, it's 2 minutes and 58 seconds. Lastly, the value, the key critical value of your of your country is the premium you place on citizenship. i.e. the manifestation of that citizenship is your passport. But when you trivialize it to the extent where it is being sold to immigrants who spend 2 days in Dominica and travel to Canada and pose as tourists going to the US, where you trivialize the main emblem of your citizenship to such an extent, then what is the efficacy of a civil or criminal or legal justice system where you do not even value what makes you Dominican?
I'm not sure whether Irvin Andre was put last by some device or by accident, but he's raised a number of very troublesome issues that we ought to discuss and to see whether we can find some formula to avoid our getting into these messes essentially is what it is. So, now, to come and give us a summary and perhaps some indication of the perspective of his government on some of the discussions that have taken place so far.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, say that I'm excited about the deliberations of this panel. I think they mentioned quite a number of things that this government is looking forward to doing, and I've started the process of doing. All who spoke this morning hinged on education. And I must tell you, my dear friends, I think that education in Dominica, to a great extent, has failed us and has failed our country. Because our education system was getting too much at preparing our students for exams rather than dealing with the realities of life and our economy. That's why we're moving towards a national curriculum that will inform us, or inform our students, and inform the country as to what direction the country is taking, so that our students can make a meaningful contribution to the Dominica's development and their own personal development. So we move towards the national curriculum. But also we have to go back to the whole ethics in our education system. Like I mentioned, education is a conduit for transmitting a country's or nation's ideals, culture, and beliefs. And we have to go back to the primary school, because most of our students don't understand that they too have a contribution to make to Dominica's development. And we in the civil society call on government for all sorts of things. And as Minister of Education, I do take time off to go to school to teach in various secondary schools in the country. And I was telling my students that if your parents could make a 16 cents contribution per day to the school, that is $5 per month, then the Postal Secondary School, for example, would realize from $45,000 to $50,000 a year that will go towards the school's development. So I'm pleased to tell you that the government is committed to hear it from you and also to implement it. And myself and Mr. Henderson are there, the youngest person in government, and we're the energy. And we have respect for the Dominican diaspora and for the contribution that you want to make. And we'll ensure that the government listens to you and you make a contribution and feel part of Dominica. But we must not do it in a way of blaming anybody. It's our responsibility as Dominicans, no matter wherever we are, to recognize that something is wrong and we have to correct it. And we'll start with it. And the over-reliance on the dependence of government, that's where our education system must come to tell our students and tell the nation that, look, it is not Pierre Charles or Roosevelt Spirit of Henderson, it is us.